Welcome to Grip Strip Podcast, episode 72. Back to business, back to regular programming because Josh is back. Thanks to Tom Horks of the Monkey See podcast for coming on last week and filling in admirably. Gave him a better time to do it so it wouldn't be ridiculous. It also probably helped. Uh, but before we get into everything in our usual open, I want to send condolences, both Josh and I, to uh, the family of Robert Foote, who passed away after an accident at Brands Hatch when a car spun off the track. Um, I'm not. It doesn't say where, but I kind of have an idea where.
The
Uh,
grab him straight is what the article says.
Grab them straight. Okay, um, so that's it's a shame. He's a mayor of a local town he was in, and council member. So it's a shame. 67-year-old gentleman. So condolences and prayers to the his family, and it's a sad thing when somebody loses their life no matter what. But it's like when something like that and a freak accident kind of deal. Jimmy Broadbent talked about it on his channel because Brit Car was racing there. I think the British Touring Car Championship was there. So it was a busy weekend. We also want to give our thoughts to and best wishes to Jack Aiken and Davide Rigon, who were both injured after an accident coming out of Eau Rouge and going in a Radion at the 24 Hours of Spa. They there's yeah, and I mean it's pretty insane. The crash. I only saw a clip from a local camera person, and basically there's just sheer demolition. One car hits the tires coming out of the exit of Eau Rouge and spins out in the middle of the track. And next thing you know, Jack Aiken's, I think that was Jack Aiken's car goes and slams in the back of said car, which I assume is Davide Rigon car. And so hopefully those guys will be um, okay in due time and recover. Aiken is the only Williams driver or Williams junior driver at the moment that has the super license points to actually move up to F1. That will be something that hopefully once he recovers can be brought up in regards to the possibility of him getting a seat. But that's neither here nor there. Josh, before we get on with the show, I mean, it's crazy, how this racing deal is. We've talked about, serious accidents and deaths, but it's not just there. At the end of the day, we're all people and we're all humans and we all have to take care of one another. It's just a shame how things happen every once in a while, which kind of bring us back to earth and bring us back to the realities of the world.
Yeah, I mean it, gives you perspective and it humbles you, I guess, and you have to kind of consider things and then you move on. But of course, like all the racers, they'll they'll remember the marshal and they'll race with heavy hearts, but they'll continue to race and they'll think of that guy. Or in the case of the spa crash, I it's a terrible accident, but at the same time, that they still have to race and continue on, and you just have to. It's always something you have to think about in the back of your mind when when you hop into a race car and you take the risk of getting an accident like that, getting hurt, or potentially dying. So just like you said, thoughts and prayers out to both uh, of the people involved in those accidents, and just unfortunate that it happened, but it's just how it is, and you have to be able to process it and move on with it. So unfortunate that it did happen, though.
Yeah, I mean it's a sad thing. It's something that you don't want to see. I mean, there are segments of our population that seemingly are like that. It's part of the reason why COVID is taking off again. But that's beside the point. Uh, if you were listening to the show, you probably know who we are. I'm Philip Matthew, and the guy that was just talking is my co-host and right-hand man, and the smarter one of the two of us, definitely, and the better race car driver too. And that's Joshua Fine, the number one Trevor Lawrence fan, I think, other than his wife.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely, it's about that time of the year again. Um, and that, yeah, I'm excited. Training camp. I didn't go to training camp, but I mean, I think I probably could have had the opportunity, but I went to work instead and had to do that. But the opportunity to see Trevor Lawrence, or at least in video, was pretty good. And seeing the ball come out of his hands has a lot of velocity, and being able to see that, it really shows what kind of player he is. But glad to be back on the show after last week. Thanks to Tom for being able to fill in. Appreciate the him being able to do that, and he's always a friend of the pod, being able to come on here and discuss racing with us. But had a great vacation, being able to relax. Just basically hung out at the beach for a week, and when swam in the ocean, did some fishing and all that. Saw a couple movies, read some books. Read Indie Split by John Orielkowitz. That's a really good book.
Yeah.
Showing the story of the indie split, all the way back, starting from when the Holman family took over it in the 50s and the late 40s, and then all the way to now when Roger Penske, and of course the split that happened in 1996, and the first split with CART in 78 with USAC, and all the way up to now when Roger Penske bought the series. So really good book, if you're interested in learning about the IndyCar series and its history and the problems it's had, and also gives you hope for the future of it as well. So great, relax, and being able to do that. But glad to be back on here.
Yep, I'm gonna be on that train here in a couple of days. I'll actually have a few weeks off from after finishing the summer program at the school I'm working at, and it'll be great. And it's a good idea. The reading idea is a good one. Probably fitness is a better idea too for me. Bowling practice and taking care of family and taking care of the home and whatever else we have to do, but relaxation and getting into the swing, getting into the routine, and getting back into certain stuff like the racing's going to be back now. Basically, we don't have to worry about it. Yeah, Formula One is going to be off now for 3 weeks, but then they'll be busy. IndyCar's back now, more or less till the middle of September. NASCAR's going until November. So we're going to be busy with that. The GSP will talk about all that. We'll also talk about football when we get a chance, especially once the league starts, which is the draft
September
is
9. Well, the
yeah
first Thursday night is September 9, but
yeah
when's the draft though for us?
draft is on the 22nd, so we have 18 days. So we'll probably do a little bit of fantasy talk here in a couple of weeks time. There will be a live Zoom uh, pre-show, pre and post, or pre and during the draft and whatever, and that'll be organized by me. Hopefully, I've got 10 people. I've got 2 people in my bowling league that are going to join. I just have to talk to them, can make them sign up, because hopefully they're not as bad as Vic, who's yeah. But we'll talk about all that in more detail. Last week we had one of the craziest race Formula One races in recent memory, and it saw the Hungarian Grand Prix saw Esteban Ocon beat Sebastian Vettel on track for his first career F1 win. Um, there was plenty of stuff that went on. A lot of it involved Mercedes, good, bad, and indifferent, mostly bad. Red Bulls, the last couple of races have not been very positive. Uh, then Williams getting double points. I mean, there is so much stuff that went on. We'll get into all that. we will preview the Nashville Grand Prix IndyCar race. It's going to be a busy weekend there on the streets of Nashville around the Nissan Stadium where the Tennessee Tuxedos, as Boomer like to call them, the Tennessee Titans, uh, play. They'll see Jim Johnson return. Maybe he'll have a little better chance because everybody else is new to the track. Uh, it'll be a deeper field. It's talks about how the silly season, some of the things that are going on. We talked about it last week on the show too. We'll also get into Watkins Glen triple header weekend. Trucks have their regular season finale there this Saturday. John Hunter's already won the regular season title, and Ross Chastain's brother will be making his truck debut, and Paul Menard randomly will be making a return. So, amongst other things, the Xfinity race is the Xfinity race. You figure either was it AJ Allmendinger or Cindric are going to win the race, unless other things happen. Really, Cup race we'll get into more detail. There is a little more intrigue there. The roundup will get into Formula 3 and W Series at the Hungaroring. There was touring cars, British touring cars. I'll find that information. IMSA at Road America this weekend for the Road America 500. MotoGP, Moto2, Styrian Grand Prix. So the first of two races at Red Bull Ring. Danny Pedrosa famously rode for Repsol Honda for many years. Crashed into the late great Nicky Hayden in 2006 and almost cost him the world championship. But Nicky Hayden was able to hold on and win. DTM's at Zolder. Look up those other racing series that ran last week. And then if we have time, football, we'll get into it. Trey Lance was based on one report called Patrick Mahomes 2.0. There's talks about trading Jimmy Garoppolo, and he has a lot of value. And considering the Niners gave up a bunch of firsts to get Trey Lance, who knows? We'll see what happens. Indianapolis doesn't have a right guard or a quarterback right now because of a foot injury. So there might be a place there amongst other places. I know Josh doesn't have to worry about a quarterback for the first time in a long time.
Yes.
So, I mean, there are other places though that kind of are in an issue. So we'll might get into that. We'll see where it goes. Josh already told us a little bit about what he did on his vacation, so we'll see what he's done so far in his return on the sim. If he's had any time in Nashville or anything, but we'll talk about that and then we'll close it up for the day. Also, want to give a shout out to the Karen that complained about me on the F1 Grid Talk podcast because I was pretty flip, I guess, or she didn't understand my sarcasm or sense of humor in regards to the Verstappen v. Hamilton incident, mainly because I can't stand Red Bull. And she accused me of not liking anybody or anything in Formula One, which, quite frankly, I love the sport. And I know the sport, and I'm very opinionated, but I'm also, in a joking manner. I kind of like to get everybody else laughing and saying things that'll make everybody else laugh because I want to keep it loose. Josh understands that, but then, of course, and the people that I'm on the show with generally are good too. They laugh. They like it. The fact is, they're going to keep inviting me on, and that Karen probably is not going to listen. And quite frankly, she can go fuck herself.
I want to interrupt there, but like, it's funny how they just like think like, oh, you don't like the sport, you don't like anybody. That's just funny to me the way that you put that.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, no, I don't like Egghead, and I don't like Lance Stroll or Nicholas Latifi. But then I explain why I don't like those guys. And the irony in Nicholas Latifi is something which we'll have to discuss here in a moment. But Lance Stroll, it's explainable. And he did something that gave him penalty points on Sunday because he drove like a bowling ball the same way as Valtteri Bottas. This is what's going to count as a segue here on this show, because the fact of the matter is that Karen pissed me off, that because she got pissed that I called Horner Karen Horner. I mean, the guy, if he isn't whining and bitching and moaning about something, he doesn't have a purpose in life. He sits there, he's a cuckold watching Jerry go and blow three guys. What the hell is he doing otherwise? If he's not blowing Helmut Marko and he's blowing somebody at Honda, if he's not blowing that, then he's watching Jerry blow somebody. I mean, come on. Let's be clear here. Max Verstappen's look at that guy. Look at his freaking duck lips. And I mean, he's with Nelson Piquet's daughter, so and probably a bitch. And even if she isn't a bitch, it's whatever. I don't really care. I just assume, because the fact of the matter is Nelson Piquet Jr. is a bitch. And Nelson Piquet made a career out of being an asshole too. So it's kind of like heredity. Yeah, I'm just gonna offend more people now. I don't care. I'm going on vacation, and I'm chilling, and we're gonna have fun. And if other people want to get off on making our lives miserable, well, you can go and say, I don't care. It's my show. It's our show. Sorry, it's our show. It's your show. Josh is not. And the fact of the matter is, free reign. People are going to listen, not going to listen. It's life. My life ain't going to change one way or the other. The fact of the matter is, Brett Griffin probably is going to block me at some point too, because he's a pussy and he's a terrible spotter. All he is a freaking he's a freaking ball licker, inbred, who goes and goes and shills for like the lowest common denominator, because he is. And that's why he was with Elliott Sadler for years, and then he's with Clint Boyer. It makes sense. You're an LCD inbred that probably bangs a cow, and now you're just a sponsor shill for frickin' Matt Collig. Once Matt Collig figures out that the guy's an inbreeder, he might just throw him out the side and do us all a favor. Throw him off the side of the frickin' truck, one of the trucks. But sorry about that. I got going there. So yeah, Formula One, Hungarian Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas decided to throw a strike in the first corner on intermediate tires, and he did. He took out everybody that's battling for third place, including himself, in the points in the drivers' championship. He also got into both Red Bulls, which kind of made me happy, honestly, because just to see them whine and moan kind of just brings joy. Max Verstappen's car being destroyed doesn't really bother me that much. Uh, Perez, it kind of does, because it sounds like Perez might be in trouble, but we don't know. Esteban Ocon and Sebastian Vettel were the two biggest beneficiaries, because Mercedes dick stepped themselves and decided to keep Lewis Hamilton out on the racetrack. There's rules stating you can't say anything leading up to a start. But for all intents and purposes, Lewis was saying the track was dry. And I don't know what they discussed prior to the restart there, but everybody else pitted. I mean, even Giovinazzi, who had pitted prior to the initial start, put slicks on, couldn't make it through that lap to the point where he went and pitted anyway. I think he got a 10-second stop go too in the process, but he ended up he pitted too. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, I think he should have probably stayed out. It wouldn't have looked as bad as freaking Lewis Hamilton being the only one. But that was the beginning of what became a cluster of a day for Mercedes. Well, it was a cluster of a day because Valtteri did what he did. I mean, we'll get into more details, but the fact is, Esteban Ocon, who a few weeks ago was in hibernation, signed a 3-year extension, and it didn't make sense why he got a 3-year extension. Well, now we know why he has a 3-year extension, and he's probably going to be the lead dog once Fred Alonso calls it quits. He went out there and he beat a 4-time world champion on merit. The Endstone team went out there and won their first race since Kimi Räikkönen, I think Australian Grand Prix 2013 or something. And I mean, first Grand Prix win for him after he finished second at the Sakir Grand Prix. last November. Big deal for him. Big deal for Alpine. Sebastian Vettel finished second. They said that he didn't have enough fuel to give us his car didn't have enough fuel for a sample, and then they disqualified him, even though he finished second, did the podium the whole bit. So everybody moves up. Lewis Hamilton finished third, so he moved up to second. Let's go over here. Let me just bring this up. Yeah, so Vettel was DQ'd. So Hamilton and Sainz are the podium. Alonso fourth, Gasly fifth, Yuki Tsunoda sixth, Nicholas Latifi finished seventh. I'll repeat that. Nicholas Latifi finished seventh in a Formula One race, in a Williams. George Russell scored points in a Williams. Verstappen finished ninth. Kimi Räikkönen hit everything but the lottery. He was part of the reason why Lewis couldn't win the race. Finished 10th. Daniel Ricciardo had a nightmare of a day and didn't even score points in McLaren, which is fucking pathetic. And I'm a Daniel Ricciardo fan. Schumacher and Giovinazzi are the last two finishers. Egghead got run over by Kimi Räikkönen before Kimi Räikkönen was just a moving chicane, and then also assisted Fred Alonso in his defense like he was the Chicago Bears in 1986 on Lewis Hamilton. Lando, Bottas, Perez, Leclerc, who was taken out by Lance Stroll because he's Lance Stroll. So that was the 6 DNFs there. So only 14 finishers, 13 classified because Sebastian Vettel was disqualified. I was talking to my coworker, and I'm like, the reason why they disqualified him is because of his defiance with the whole, the LGBTQ thing and wearing the shirt and all that. And they're like, well, we're mad that you did that and you basically broke protocol and you ran this race. And I'm like, if he had won the race, they wouldn't have done that. Because he finished second, they're like, yeah, it's whatever. Get him where it hurts. They're gonna appeal it, Aston Martin and all that. But I think honestly, because of his takes and his views and all that, the way he was outspoken about it with the LGBTQ deal, Lewis, of course, supports that too. They basically screwed him over that way. I'm sure they could say that it was short of fuel, but then you'd have to question Esteban Ocon because he stopped his car too, short of the pits or whatever. He was or just past the pits. He drove around for not like. So why wasn't he questioned? Or there was other cars that were running out of fuel. Why is it only Sebastian Vettel? But that's, I guess, a side story. What were your thoughts on, and what do you think? It's a lot to unpack here, Josh, in regards to this race.
I mean, yeah, it's a lot to unpack, but I thought this was probably one of the better races this year so far. Probably the one, probably the second best, maybe even the best race of the year so far. If the last two races in Formula One have been probably the two best races so far, and I actually might want to rank this one above the British Grand Prix because of the way that it turned out with the first time winner and the defense with Alonso against Hamilton and the first lap crash and all that stuff. When you consider all that, that's what I think. But with Alonso versus Hamilton, that was vintage Alonso. And also, I think maybe even a little bit of going back to 2007 with Alonso and Lewis Hamilton when they were teammates at McLaren, and they weren't really on the best of terms and everything, and that all kind of boiled over into kind of a scandal, and then Fred left McLaren and went on, and Lewis went on and won his first title a year later. But with that was I like the way Alonso was able to keep defense and keep Lewis Hamilton from passing him. Lewis had a lot of opportunities to try to get around Alonso on the outside, but wasn't able to do it. Alonso made his car wide enough throughout the corners to be able to keep Hamilton at bay. But then, at the end of the day, he was unable to keep him from getting past because he did overrun turn one, and then Lewis finally able to get alongside him and then get by. But still, that was a pretty master class of defense in terms of race and just overall pace from Fred Alonso there, because if it weren't for him being able to drive like that, Lewis Hamilton probably could have gone and won the race. I didn't think Lewis was going to be able to win the race. I thought he was still too far back, but evidently, once he got past Alonso, he had a lot more pace than what we all thought he did, and probably that was because he was able to, go and pit and get new tires, but still, even with that, he was caught behind Alonso and wasn't able to get by him. But then once he did, it's like he had a whole completely different car, and then he was able to get past Carlos Sainz pretty easily, and then he was actually very close to Sebastian Vettel and Esteban Ocon at the very end of the race. So that's indicative of how good Lewis' car was if he had been able to have things happen his way. But then on the other side of it, when you consider Ocon and Vettel, Ocon was able to keep the lead, and it seemed like there was at times Vettel was able to get close to Ocon throughout the race, but then ultimately it seemed like there was about maybe like a 1 second gap or so between Ocon and Vettel, and Ocon, using the dirty air probably, but he was able to keep Vettel behind, or keep Vettel behind him there, and eventually get his first win. But then, also the wreck too, that gave him the opportunity, because if it weren't for the wreck, there's probably not a good chance that the running order gets disorganized and then they end up into the lead. But you have to be able to take advantage of those opportunities, and that's what Alpine did. That's what Vettel did. Before getting disqualified, and ultimately that's what Ocon did. So a lot of things that happen, and when you look at the running order, it's not a typical Formula One running order. So this is definitely one of the more surprise races that we've had in recent memory, and something to keep in mind as we go forward throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, there's plenty unpacked there. I mean, in as you said, and plenty in all good points in regards to the way Ocon and Vettel both showed up here in this spot. But Vettel, to be fair, I think if there was any question, is Sebastian Vettel invested? Is Sebastian Vettel still that guy? I mean, is he the guy that won 4 world championships? Yes, he's the guy that won 4 world championships, 53 races, all these poles, whatever. But is he at that same level? I don't think so. But I think that there are signs, and his driving. The reality is he was close. He gave it a couple of shots to try and pass Ocon. I think if their strategy was, they didn't have a good pit stop either. Strategy was a little better, which I'm going to get into in a minute, but their pit stop wasn't as good as the Alpine pit stop. That basically was to seal the deal. But Ocon drove a great race, and he's been highly rated for many years. Mercedes had him as a junior. They let him go to Alpine. I mean, he's had to take a year off and come back. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff there. I've talked about Pierre Gasly ad nauseum here, the grid talk, whatever, as somebody who I would have thought would have been a better fit because he's a French driver too. He's got the whole Red Bull thing, and anybody who comes from Red Bull usually does better once they leave Red Bull. Um, and I thought that would have been a better idea. But hey, Esteban Ocon went out there and he's got the same amount of Grand Prix wins as Pierre Gasly, and it had the same kind of cluster F kind of deal with wrecks and nonsense and Mercedes dick stepping themselves. And I mean, Lewis screwed himself at Monza last year. In this case, the team did. Then he got stuck behind Pierre Gasly, couldn't go anywhere, and he's like, I can't go anywhere. This is BS. They pit him, undercut So he gets past Daniel Ricciardo, gets past Gasly, gets past uh, Verstappen with his damaged car. Then he's able to make a little more progress, move up a little bit. They do the same strat as they had in 2019. Rosberg and all of them are talking about it. Do the same strat as 2019. Then what happens is, I think early in that run, maybe the first or second lap out of the pits, he had a run on Alonso. He was going to make the move on the he was going to dive bomb inside of turn one. Probably would have been similar to something like akin to what PK did to Senna in '86, but without the slide. Um, but then Kimi Räikkönen randomly is coming out of the pits. I mean, it's bad enough, you know, that's the first time I think Egghead hasn't been responsible for damage ever in his life. Um, they they decide to release him out of the pits while there's a battle for position. I'm sure, yeah, it's a race, whatever, and he's just out there and not even looking in the mirrors. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? And from that moment on, that was the beginning of the end of Lewis's race. He spent 8 laps, I think, behind Alonso, and I wasn't like some like big huge Alonso fan. I was a fan of his when I supported it when he was beating Schumacher. The way him and Hamilton went at it, whatever. I've been a Hamilton guy from his GP2 days. He's a great race car driver. He's one of the best race car drivers I've ever seen. He's become somewhat of a spokesperson and a statesman. Like, he's got a personality. He's good for the sport. The current Fernando Alonso is good for the sport. And what he did was, all time. His defense was like Bill Belichick level defense. And he went and rode every edge and did everything that he could. And that defense, as you said, and been said multiple times over, in many different avenues, whether it's pods or writing, whatever. He's the reason why, main reason why Esteban Ocon won. As much as I want to say Esteban Ocon, he did a great job, he beat Vettel, all that. If Alonso doesn't defend like that, as Josh said, he caught up to Carlos Sainz in like a quarter of a lap. He then was catching the top two at about a 1.5 second, 1 to 2 seconds lap. I mean, come on. I think it would have at least been interesting. He finished what did it work out to be? He finished 2.7 seconds off at the end of the race, and that's after he was held up behind 2.736 off of the win with 3 pit stops, with held up by Alonso, the whole bit. And he finished 13 seconds, basically 13 seconds ahead of Alonso by the end of the race. So it was that defense. But credit to Fernando Alonso. There's a reason why he's one of the best, and he's so well respected, and he's one of the Spanish heroes and all that. Like, he's a legend. I am curious to see if he's going to keep on going after 22. Really, it'll be cool to see him, Alonso, Hamilton, Vettel keep going. It's not as good for like the youth movement because there really is nowhere to go. But in turn, they're 3 great veterans who have all won championships, and it gives people that have been watching this sport for many years, keeps them going too. While some of this young talent maybe gets to develop, take more time, instead of the Red Bull method of just hurrying people up and then spitting them out. I mean, Ferrari lost out with Leclerc, but Carlos Sainz gets a podium again, second time this year. Alonso, a top 5 finish, so he's solidifying his point situation. 5th and 6th for AlphaTauri. Williams double points, 7th and 8th. I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, I mean, I talked about this, and I figured we can go into that too. I mean, we can get into the midfield. I think we can blend these into two parts here. We have the Mercedes and Red Bull aspect of it, where Valtteri Bottas became a bowling ball. The team completely shit the bed with Lewis Hamilton. Their car is incapable of following anybody more than any other car on the grid. Even a guy of Lewis Hamilton's talent and greatness can't make that car work, which is probably the biggest, if you want, the biggest reason why they're changing the regulations. It's that. Um, you have Red Bull for 2 weeks, 2 races in a row. I'm going into a summer break. I think they have 2 points, 3 points, whatever, over 2 races, because of course, they got a double non-point score at the British Grand Prix. Then they got 2 points. Yeah, so they have 2 points. Uh, Basically three, because Pierre Gasly went out and just put a set of softs and stole the fastest lap for the second time, second race in a row, because that's Red Bull's thing, because they're petty. Um, so there is that, but they had near 50-point lead, and I think we were talking about it on here, Josh, about how it seemed like we were going down a path where Red Bull was going to win both of these both championships. Now all of a sudden, Lewis Hamilton has, going into the summer break, an 8-point lead, coming off of 4, 5 second places and 1 first, which of course was at the expense of Max Verstappen, while Max had 1 non-score and a 9th place finish. So 43-2, so 41-point gain, leads to, he had a 32-point lead in the drivers' championship, so that's gone. Now it's an 8-point deficit. In the team's championship, it was a much different story prior to the British Grand Prix. Now in the last 2 races, Mercedes has scored 58 points to 2 for the and then there's 3 points each for, because of the sprint. That's what that is. So the fact is, ever since the sprint race at Silverstone, the scoring is 58-2, and that has led to Mercedes taking a 12-point advantage in the Constructors' Championship. So that's 46-point lead. 46-point lead for the Constructors, which is over a full race, basically minus all the other mini points now, but the sprint race and all that crap. But they had a full race with a first and second place finish, even with fastest lap on Mercedes, and now it's flipped. So I guess we'll get into the midfield, but first, your thoughts on how this deal is really flipped on basically one move going into the summer break, and who do you feel? Do you think that it's strict right now? It's all Mercedes, or do you think there's something for Red Bull, and they're just going to go and kind of reset, and then they're going to be back to normal once we get to Spa here in a few weeks' time for the Belgian Grand Prix?
Well, it's an interesting storyline for sure. I think with the for Mercedes, I think they have the opportunity to continue to make changes or improvements to their car or upgrades, whatever, and so does Red Bull. And I think for both those teams, they'll have to take that advantage during the break to be able to figure out how to make their cars faster. If they should start focusing more on less downforce setups or more downforce setups or something to get more out of the car handling wise. if they need to make changes to the power unit or whatever. But I think right now Mercedes it has a little bit of an edge because they've been able to score points, like you said, and Red Bull has only scored 2 points from this past race, and really only 1 point considering where they finished at before Sebastian Vettel's disqualification. And I think one thing to consider for Red Bulls during this past race at Hungary, should they have done what Lewis Hamilton's team did and stayed out on the track, even though they had a damaged car and they did have a little bit of repairs, should they have stayed out, like Larry Mack says on Fox, like track position, like it was right there. Even with a damaged car, they could have just stayed out for a couple of laps and tried to salvage something, at least for the initial part.
Yeah, good
And
point.
that could have been something to do there. And especially with initially, Max had that pass against Mick Schumacher, but that was really the only pass that he really made throughout that Grand Prix. I think later on he eventually got around Daniel Ricciardo, but he was stuck behind him for a majority of that Grand Prix, especially in the second half of that race. So, if they were able to kind of leapfrog some cars by staying out after the red flag, and then maybe coming in and getting tires around the same time Lewis Hamilton did, maybe that changes their race, and they are able to be on a different strategy, or on the same strategy as Lewis Hamilton there. So that's something you consider, and something that they failed to do. And you have to be able to take those kind of risks, I guess, and or make that evaluation to do that, to be able to stay ahead in the championship, or to keep it even at least. And now they're slightly behind Mercedes, and Max is slightly behind Lewis now in the drivers' championship. So that was maybe an opportunity that they didn't take advantage of. But I think with Spa coming up, it's a high speed racetrack, and I think maybe it might favor Red Bull over Mercedes, but I'd have to call it even right now, because I mean, I could see either or of those teams being really good and having good pace there. So a lot of things that can happen in between now and then. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with Red Bull and Mercedes. But it's definitely kind of back to the beginning of the season almost, or well, maybe the first couple of races. We thought Mercedes had a little bit of better of advantage over Red Bull. So maybe it's back to that. But now I think it's almost kind of even. So it's all kind of just setting things back to square one, I guess. And now we have to see who's got a better opportunity to take advantage of the break and improve upon their efforts this year.
The one thing that will affect any type of changes is there is a mandatory shutdown that takes place. I don't know if it's for the entire. It can't be for the entire 3 weeks, but I think there's at least a 14-day shutdown or something like that. So that's for the crew, men and women that are grinding, the people that really make this show work. It's the same way as with NASCAR, and people that I follow that are friends that I'm like social media friends with, and that they talk about, being on the road. Like now for them, it's a similar kind of deal. From now until November, basically for I don't know, with Xfinity and trucks, they have like weird schedule, especially the trucks is a joke, but they don't have a whole lot of off time between now and before Thanksgiving, basically, or I mean early November. Um, it's the same thing for Formula One. After this 3 weeks is done, they're going to have 3 consecutive races with the Belgian Grand Prix, Italian Grand Prix, and the Dutch Grand Prix. There looks like 2 races will be in Coda after no race at Coda. Last year, they're going to have 2. That'll be interesting. I mean, it's a really rough racetrack, so I'm sure all the drivers are going to be whining about that. That'll be something. And they're probably going to have to run like a step down, or on one of the races, they're probably going to run a step down with the tires. That's going to make it a little more interesting too. Maybe they should just run a sprint format at one of those races. I think that might be an idea. That might change things up a little bit. That would be a good thing to do, actually, for the races at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin. But hey, we'll just put it out there so you can manifest it. Let's see if we can manifest it. I would like to manifest a couple $1,000,000 too. Then I could go and be a part of Trackhouse, since Trackhouse seems to be the in thing these days. Or maybe I can get a couple $1,000,000 and buy one of Rick Ware's charters. So then it'll go to a good place instead of wherever the hell it might go. Yeah, it was definitely a crazy race. Yeah, I think before we get on to the previews, we talked about Alonso and his defense. Signs the midfield battle is definitely interesting. AlphaTauri benefited greatly uh, with the fifth and sixth place finish. Williams jumped from ninth to eighth, ninth with 0 points to eighth with their double points deal here. Close that. It's great how motorsport.com just likes to freeze on my computer. It doesn't matter what computer I'm on, and it's annoying. And yeah, there you go. So that's what I wanted in the first place. 10 points for Williams. First time since Robert Kubica scored points for them at the German Grand Prix a couple of years ago, which cost George points because he ended up finishing 11. There was a lot going on there, but for George Russell, of course, in his likely scenario where he's going to go, big deal for him for scoring for Williams after what he's done for them for most of his time. Latifi doing what he did, which is basically out of character for him. AlphaTauri kind of going in between AlphaTauri, and then you consider, what is it, 37 points for Renault uh, on Sunday, or I mean for Alpine. Like that's a big deal. They move into the fifth in the constructors championship. They have a 9 point lead on AlphaTauri. The loss of those 18 points for Aston Martin, that would have been they would have been at 70. Now they're at 48, so now they're basically in no man's land. It's a huge deal. Ferrari with the Carlos Sainz podium is now tied with McLaren at 163. Going into the next phase of races there. So that'll be interesting for third in constructors. Alpine and AlphaTauri. It looks like the momentum is starting to turn. Alpine was in seventh a few races ago. Now they're in fifth. The momentum is there. Alfa Romeo is not going to make up 7 points. Basically, Williams is just locked up eighth in the constructors. Alfa Romeo is going to be ninth, and Putin Haas, mercifully, will finish last. I think that before we go and move on, I think there's that Sebastian Vettel disqualification was big in regards to how the constructors is looking, and for him too. I mean, he's had a good year, and now all of a sudden that points drop takes him outside of now. He went from being he would have been at 48 points and he'd have been flirting with eighth in the drivers championship. Instead, now he's 9 points behind Esteban Ocon, who got 25 points. He only had 14 points before the race on Sunday. Alonso up there ahead of him, and then Ricardo, who didn't score points at Hungary, and then he has had two non-points finishes, or he didn't score in the sprint, but um, he's had two non-points finishes in the last like three races or four races. Pierre Gasly. Ferrari's in their own little world. the top three battle, like the third place battle, didn't change because they all crashed out. Sainz and Leclerc uh, have 163 by combined, so that shows that Ricardo's the dead weight right now. A lot to unpack in regards to what's going to go on here. We'll get into it in more detail for the Belgian Grand Prix, but a lot of things going on there within the midfield.
Yeah, I mean, with you especially consider with Vettel. I mean, it's a big difference being 10th, versus 12th in the points right now, and certainly being would have been a chance to be 2 points behind eighth place in the championship with Pierre Gasly there. Leclerc is in kind of his own. Like you said, Ferrari's kind of in their own land. Then you go on to the upper echelon with in the standings, I guess, with Red Bull, Perez there, and then Valtteri Bottas. They're kind of both in that range, I guess, where we could see a change between third and fifth place with Norris also there, and Norris has scored points in every race this season except for this race here in Hungary where he got crashed out. So missed opportunity for Norris for sure in being able to, I guess, get away from Bottas and Perez in the points. Certainly could have had that opportunity to at least solidify or have a better position as a third place in the championship. But then on the flip side, his teammate also didn't score points. And I think probably could have had better pace too if he didn't get crash damage on the first lap as well. Um, and he's kind of been stuck in ninth, and a bit of a disappointing season really for Ricardo, with a lot of expectations going into this year with McLaren, and then not really being able to completely capitalize with bad luck, and then also just not being able to have good feel with the car and not being used to the handling quite right. So that's a little bit of disappointment there, but certainly going into next year they'll probably be a little bit better. We'll see. But I think, also with Pierre Gasly is kind of there stuck in eighth place, and definitely has an opportunity to uh, move on, I guess, move forward. Maybe later on in the year he can challenge Leclerc or Carlos Sainz, and we'll have to see about that. But I think anywhere from 12th, eighth through 12th place is definitely can still be a battle. I think beyond that, I don't really see the standings change really that much. And then I think you'll have to see what happens between Norris, Bottas, and Perez, whether we see a change in position there. And then, of course, going back to the title fight, Hamilton, Verstappen, that's always going to be the main card, I guess, to put in boxing terms. That'll be, the we'll see what happens there, but a lot of moving pieces, and certainly none of it is solidified there in this driver standings.
Yeah, a lot more to get into and half a season to go in Formula One. So we'll probably get into that next few weeks once we get closer to the Belgian Grand Prix. And we'll get in and see what's going on and who's going to be where, be faster tracks, more high speed for the next two races. And then the Dutch Grand Prix is going to be more of a similar deal to what we had at Austria, I think, or even Hungary, which might, who knows what that'll mean, might be more of a wild card. IndyCar race at Nashville, the streets of Nashville. We'll see IndyCar series run there for the first time. Street course races, usually in the history of the not only the IndyCar series, but in general, have not been successful. So we'll see. But there's a lot of juice. There's a lot of positive momentum in regards to the IndyCar race here. You have Josef Newgarden, a Tennessee guy, two-time champion there. You have Big Machine Records, who's been connected to IndyCar, Scott Borchetta, the whole bit. There's a lot of juice there. I mean, honestly, I guess the initial thing before we get into it, I don't know, Josh, have you been able to race like Roman Grosjean was able to do and show in the HBD simulator, and the other guys have been able to run seemingly run the Nashville street course. What are your thoughts if you saw the video? If not, but what are your thoughts of the track itself? The fact there's a gas station before one of the last turns, which makes it a true street course. Um,
I mean, yeah, like it's I haven't had a chance to because it hasn't been released onto iRacing yet or any of the other simulators there. I'm I think the simulator that they were using was R Factor Pro, which is only commercial or privately available to contractors and teams, I think. So that's their, I guess, program for that, but it was a really good rendition of that, and think a lot of detail that went into that. So uh, good job for those guys being able to develop the professional simulator for the drivers to use. And I mean, you could tell it wasn't iRacing because iRacing has the Cosworth logo on the steering wheel, and plus there's the name of your driver on the dashboard as well. But the course itself, though, was very interesting. A lot of 90-degree corners in the course. You're passing by the Tennessee Titans Stadium. Fuck the Titans. Don't care what you say. I'm from Duval, so it's what we say about the Titans. But um, then you got the bridge. You're going over the Korean Veterans Memorial there, and that's going to be interesting. I've heard a lot of drivers talk about. I think Newgarden specifically, he talked about that on Dale Jr.'s podcast, and seems like there's going to be a I mean, I don't think there's going to be an issue, but the change in handling, I think, going over a bridge like that onto the corners, that could be interesting, and especially with the level of downforce going over that, that'll be something that we'll have to look out for, because it's been a long time, I guess, since we've seen Indy cars drive over actual bridge like that. And I don't think they've ever driven as large of a bridge like that. I mean, I think I can't remember, maybe like uh, the old days back when they raced the New Meadowlands back in the late 80s, early 90s or something like that, where you saw a bridge. Maybe I feel like I remember a bridge on that track, but I'm not sure.
yeah, they had like overpasses the
Yeah,
way that it's more like kind of like the yeah, it's more of like off ramps and whatever. It wasn't as much of a bridge. I know what you're talking about because
yeah,
I'm kind of like an underground Meadowlands aficionado because I never knew it until a few years ago that they ran at the Meadowlands, and then I've watched races and they had different configurations. So I know, yeah, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, uh I can't really think of any street course that's had such a long, like a bridge or something. Like you'd have an overpass, or you'd have like what are you like San Jose, the old cart San Jose track where they were launching themselves over train tracks, or you had Baltimore where they were launching themselves over train tracks. Usually these street courses are located around there. I mean, this one's around a stadium too, but you're using everyone thinks about Long Beach. Long Beach had different configurations, but generally it's been in that same area since the 70s. St. Pete
yep,
had a longer course prior to 2003. Their initial course was a different configuration, but basically had most of what we have today. I think they had a longer, instead of where you turn, I think in turn 3, 4, I guess I'm the math may be off, but where you turn right, turn 3 and 4, you'd go longer down the straight, you'd make a couple of rights, come back up, and then you'd be doing basically what they were doing back in the 80s. Uh, but now they've changed it a little bit since 2003 when they returned. Those are two of the main street courses that we have. in the States. I mean, obviously NASCAR now is on a gimmick that they want a street course, but Long Beach is the standard bearer. St. Pete has become a standout race. The Hope Robin Miller, God bless him. Hopefully, he'll be okay. He wrote a great article last week talking about his struggle. Maybe, I mean, we can pray for him and see if he can make it through his battle that he's having with cancer. But he's talking about how many street courses there's been and all these different things. But there's a lot of support here, and there's a lot of good energy. And it looks like the funding is good too. When you consider the Titans are probably involved with it, the
I mean,
the
Dale Jr.'s invested.
Adams family is invested. You got Junebug, you got Scott Borchetta, you got all these different people. You probably got all these musicians, and you got like Newgarden. You got all these American drivers. You got Jim Johnson at least for this year and next year. I mean, you got different things going. You got a 28 car field from all intents and purposes. So you got a really deep field. It it sounds like this Nashville Grand Prix should be a fun one. It's going to end in the dark. They're starting it at 5:30, so there's going to be like low sunlight. That's going to be kind of an issue, and I think it will be ending in darkness, which will be an interesting twist to an IndyCar race, starting in daylight, ending in darkness on a road course. They did it at Houston around the NRG Stadium for years ago. They used to do race in the at night there back in the kart days, or Champ Car, whatever you want. I call it kart, whatever. But Champ Car days, they ran at night. Then I think they did a twilight race. Then they did it right in the middle of the day. So that'll be cool too. But I think in regards to this weekend's race, we have to get back to the notion Alex Palou is the points leader. You know, Alex Palou um has a chance to win this IndyCar championship. And like there's a whole lot going on. You have well, who knew Daniel Suarez is going to be driving a Trans Am car this weekend? Well, you drive a Trans Am car at Nashville on Saturday, and then he's going to be driving the Cup race on Sunday. God bless him. But in regards to the Nashville Grand Prix itself, the Music City Grand Prix, there's so you have Trans Am, SRO, GT America. You have Trans Am, IndyCar, Stadium Super Trucks, Music. Wow, Brooks and Dunn, Vince Neil. Look at that. I mean, it's a really busy weekend. That is unbelievable. You want to
Yeah,
talk about
a lot of entertainment.
a lot of entertain. You're getting your money's worth if you get to go to Nashville this weekend. Possibility you'll get COVID too, but hey, you'll have at least had fun and watched some Indy cars and a lot of other fast stuff. Uh, to me, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I think Josef Newgarden, he puts a lot of pressure on himself. The only thing he really hasn't won for Penske, I mean, I don't think he's ever going to get rid of him, but he hasn't won Indy. I think Josef Newgarden's putting as much pressure to win Indy as he is to try to win this race. And considering where he's at in points, to me, he's the favorite because he's great on street courses. He won St. Pete. He is the kind of guy, and the home game, anything that accounts for a pseudo home game, like it's Martin Truex Jr.
Yeah,
or
Rick Allen. It's a home track.
yeah, it's a home track. Everything's a home track for Martin Truex Jr. Yeah, so it's the same thing with Josef Newgarden, and I'm assuming, well, Rick Allen's going to be at Watkins Glen because he took the week off the last time. Um, Thankfully, because it was actually a better broadcast, honestly. But I don't know who they're going to have. I figure it'll probably be um why am I forgetting his name now? Uh, Dang it. The guy that
The guy that does the pits,
Kevin
Kevin
Lee.
Lee. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's a symbiotic deal there. Kevin Lee, along with Maga Boy, and it depends actually because
Townsend.
Townsend is going to be
He's
at
at
Road
IMSA.
America, so he may not be okay. So who knows who the hell they're
Maybe they'll get
adding?
Brian Till, or I don't know. Maybe he'll be covering
Yeah,
IMSA. Yeah.
they'll probably get Rutledge or some bullshit.
Oh yeah, because he did the whole thing with Nashville the
Yeah,
last time when NASCAR was there.
they'll
Yeah.
probably yeah. I mean, it either way, it doesn't really matter with them. They might just have Jack Collinsworth go and call the race. Why not? Because they're just trying to insert Jack Collinsworth in a random crap with racing, as though Jack Collinsworth gives a shit about racing, which he doesn't. Um, but yeah, Newgarden to me is a favorite. Outside of that, I mean, in regards to the points battle, Palou, you can't sleep on him right now, and they've had a long break. You figure amount of sim time they've been able to do. Ganassi's going to respond here now that they know that they're out of Chip is out of NASCAR, you know, and he's going to want to win this championship. So I figure Palou and Dixon will be there too. But um, what are your thoughts? Who do you see as favorites and possible dark horse going into this weekend's race at Nashville?
Well, I mean, I think naturally the favorite has to be Joseph Newgarden. I mean, like you said, he's hometown boy. Grew up in nearby Hendersonville, which right next to Nashville. So this is a opportunity for him to get the home win in front of his friends and family, and his wife, and all that. So be good for him to get that, and definitely would help him in the championship. But you can't count out guys like Alex Palou. I mean, he's been really good this year. Can't count out somebody like Pato O'Ward, who's been excellent as well this year and is right there in the championship. And I think this race for both of these drivers, how they race in this race and whatever the result is, I think will help probably determine who ends up winning the IndyCar championship. And this will probably be a pivotal chapter, I guess, in that title fight. And then I think you mentioned Scott Dixon, but I think you also have to look at somebody like Colton Herta, who won at St. Petersburg and has been pretty good on street courses as well. So I think you have to look at a guy like him. Maybe we see something from Graham Rahal or Takuma Sato, both guys that are. I mean, I think I don't know about Takuma, but I think Graham Rahal is probably fairly well on street courses. The rest of Team Penske, Will Power has been good on street courses. Alex Rossi, he's won at Long Beach before in the past, twice actually. So a lot of guys in the field that could potentially win this Grand Prix. And like you said, for the first time, we don't know who's going to be truly good here. We can only infer based on past history. So we have the opportunity for Jimmy Johnson to maybe actually, I mean, he's had good pace in the race, just hasn't had it down quite yet in qualifying trim in practice because he just doesn't have enough track time. So maybe it's opportunity for Jimmy Johnson to get his best finish so far, maybe finish on the lead lap in an IndyCar for the first time. And Romain Grosjean also, I mean, he had the simulator preview and maybe that's an advantage or something, probably not, but it does give him opportunity to be able to get another good finish, maybe possibly another podium, and that'll be leading up into uh, Gateway, where he wants to make his first time oval debut. So a lot on the line as well for Romain Grosjean. So a lot of these drivers have an opportunity to improve their position in points or be able to take the lead in the championship or inch closer to that. So going to be a fun Grand Prix to look out and watch out for, I guess, with all these storylines.
Yeah, and it's going to be I mean, with IndyCar, as Josh mentioned, I mean, the limited practice is a big concern. Roughness of the track's probably going to come up. Uh, Endurance is going to be a big deal. But there are entertaining aspects of the track. There will be opportunities to pass there because of the long straights and the bridges over the bridges and a bridge. I mean, sorry, and we will see. We will talk about it next week on the GSP. See what happens and how that sets up Gateway or the Indy Grand Prix or whatever the hell they're calling it next week during the Cup race there at Indianapolis Road Course, and then Gateway, which is I think the last oval of the year. So that'll be a big deal. Gateway, which is another big, basically their third biggest race of the year. Maybe I mean definitely in the top five biggest races of the year. Long Beach being back this year will be a big deal as well. NASCAR back at Watkins Glen after the NBC break for the Olympics. Clyde definitely. I mean, we'll go and do. We'll be doing. I'll do this backwards. We'll go and go into trucks because they've been off for God knows how many weeks. They had the truck debacle at Knoxville. We're leading up to the Knoxville Nationals when that's an actual race. The truck series will have the United Reynolds 176. Track record was held by Ron Fellows back in 1997, driving for Joe Nemechek. I think it was the Bell South Chevy number 87. They have a starting lineup, 40 trucks. Whoever was going to fail to qualify withdrew. So Chad Chastain will be driving the number 45 for Nice Motorsports. Enfinger will be in the number 9. Will Rogers will be driving for, Dawson Cram's team. You have some other Parker Kligerman was starting basically tailback. Paul Menard will be in the last row behind him in a Toyota for Thor Sport, and Sam Mayer will be driving. Will be starting tailback. What is it called? Taylor Gray, who's known for running over people and not much else, is making his Truck Series debut. And Lawless Allen, which is
what a name.
That's one of the greatest names ever. I've said that on here and anywhere I can get a chance to because it's such a great name. Sad that he sucks and he drives for Josh Reaume, but Kaz Grala definitely will be a interesting driver. He had a great run at Coda in the 0-2 truck, so maybe he could go and redo that or go and have another shot at it. Josh Berry in the Rackley War 25 again. Another interesting driver. Ran top 10 for Jordan Anderson in Xfinity Kart Mid-Ohio. Defending series champion Sheldon Creed just got his Daytona win diecast here yesterday from last year. Tells you how great Lionel is. Starts 19th. And after that, you have Corey Heim, who's having a great battle in ARCA with another dweeb in Ty Gibbs, who doesn't know how to drive either, just like to run over people. Don't have to remind me about what he did to Chase at Charlotte. The points battle, you have Danny Bone actually is in starting 11th, which is interesting. Tate Fogelman 13. So there's some guys that are involved in the points here. The points right now, basically the top 10 is what your point situation is. I have to go and bring this up in the right now. The top 7 are locked in. John Hunter has won the regular season, so he's gonna get more bonus points. Rhodes, Hill, Gill, and Creed all have won a race. Zane Smith and Matt Crafton are in. Hocevar, Friesian, and Chandler Smith right now are in the top 10. Everybody else basically, for all intents and purposes, Osavar, once he starts his car or truck, will be in. Friesen kind of is in the same boat. If they get stage points, I think that'll be definite. But then it becomes after that, it becomes an issue of if Chandler Smith or one of these drivers that are outside of the top 10 can go and win. So, can one of the drivers from outside the top 10 win? Uh, yeah, I guess it's the same question as what we're going to put up for the cup race, but do you think there's somebody that really hasn't done jack crap all year and all of a sudden is going to show up at Watkins Glen after a month break and sneak up and go and get a while, like do an Eric Almirola? Like, is there an Eric Almirola in this field? Uh, pull a pole, like they don't even have qualifying. At least, like they showed signs of life, the 10 car for a few weeks, qualifying on pole at Nashville super speedway before they ended up doing what they did in New Hampshire. But are we going to see the status quo? Is the top 10 as we see it right now, points wise, going to stick through this race? And if not, who's going to be the one that goes and breaks that deal?
Yeah, I mean it's there's not really a lot of credible names after the top 10 in the, I guess, the starting lineup and in the point standings as well. I mean, maybe somebody like Johnny Sauter. I mean, he's hadn't done anything in a while. Maybe Sheldon Creed. I mean, Sheldon Creed may be the most likely guy that's outside of the top 10 as far
Creed
as the
won a
starting.
race though,
No,
so
I know that he's won a race, but I mean, I'm talking about the starting lineup. But I mean, in terms of top 10 in points, like, um, I mean, yeah, it's tough to say. There's not really like anybody, really. I mean, maybe Haley Deegan figures something out, but yeah, I don't think that will happen. But stranger things have happened. Ryan Truex. I mean, I'm just at this point, I'm just drawing names out of a hat, I think. But like I think for the most part, this race will probably just be the status quo. I would say probably the names you have to watch out for the guys that have won at road courses already, and being Ben Rhodes and Todd Gilliland. And I almost want to give the nod to Ben Rhodes because I feel like the Watkins Glen road course is similar to, I guess, the Daytona road course, because you have the chicane in the back, you have hard braking zones, the turn 190-degree corner, somewhat maybe similar a high speed corner like turn one at Daytona road courses. And I think maybe those similarities play into Ben Rhodes' hands, but I think it's a tough race to really pick out a surprise winner. I mean, John Hunter Nemechek, he's won 5 races this year, has clearly got the title in his hand for the regular season at least. But I don't really envision him as a road course racer. I mean, maybe he'll probably have good pace, but he might not have the understanding intricacies needed to really stand out on a road course, where I don't really see him like really dominating the race, or finishing like really high, like second or third, if not a win. So it'll probably be a stand ho hum race, whatever. You'll see uh different drivers up front probably trying to use different strategies, and of course you still have the stage breaks and stuff, so there's a lot of things that will happen in this race. But it's tough to even really envision any surprise winners, like I said. And of course, like the point standings and the I mean, I forgot that this was the playoff or the cutoff for the playoff for this race. So even in from that respect, like it's hard to tell who's going to make a shot or have a chance to get into the playoffs, or make a surprise run into the playoffs. So um, it's probably going to be an interesting race, but it just don't really know what storylines are to make of it.
Yeah, and they have this race. They will have a week off. Then they'll go to to Saint, what is it called? Gateway for the first race. Then they'll have another week off. Then they go to Darlington, another week off, go to Bristol, and that's when they'll have three races basically somewhat to back, which will be Bristol, Las Vegas, which the Bristol's a cutoff for the first round. They'll go to Las Vegas and Talladega, have 3 weeks off, and then run the last two races of the season. So basically, right now we've hit a dead period of the year where um, the truck series they got busy. They were busy earlier in the year. That's basically it. Used to be there would be a lot more off weeks earlier in the year, and then they'd be busier later. Now they got 14 races in uh, through early July with off weeks here and there. Now there's a lot more off weeks as we go along, and that lands in the playoffs, which is pretty stupid. But I think of the outside top 10 people in points, I think it's Kraus and the other person I would look at outside of Kraus is Tyler Ankrum. And for a wild card that is Taylor or Tanner Gray, because his teammate Todd Gilliland won at Coda. Tanner Gray hasn't done jack crap all year. He's had a horrible year. But, this is an opportunity where you just go and roll the dice. Derek Kraus has had pace. He was in position. He's been in position at times to win races. Ankrum won at Kentucky a couple of years ago for DGR. Crosley got in the playoff. I think he's somebody with the what do you call GMS team. They made the playoff last year, I think. I don't remember, but he's the kind of guy that I think has the ability and the opportunity there. But otherwise, outside of those three, I don't really see anybody else really backing in. I kind of feel like somebody like Kaz Grala is going to win the race. Honestly, I'm going to go out there and get on a limb and say that Kaz Grala is going to win on Saturday in the 0-2 truck. So Young's Motorsports gets a second win in the truck series. And we'll see what happens in regards to the playoff and all that. Xfinity series will run I was about to call it the Zippo 200 because that's what it used to be called for many years. It's the Screwball Peanut Butter Whiskey 200. After whatever, insert your sponsor here at the Glen for the Cup race. So they had to go and follow up with an Xfinity name that's just as asinine. It'll be on CNBC because of the Olympics, of course. As it stands right now, Michael Annett is on the cutoff. He's missed races, but he got a waiver. You should get a waiver if you win a race and you declare for Xfinity points, honestly. That would allow the likes of, even though I don't like him, Ty Gibbs, Josh Berry would be in there too. It would remove, it would be bad for Jeremy Clements, I know, but at least it would remove Michael Annett. Outside of really Hemrick and Harrison Burton, it's hard for me to really look at a lot of these guys in the Xfinity series that are in the points that they're not good. It's not a good series this year. I think in reality, it's as I said earlier, it starts and ends with Cindric or Allmendinger. I don't really know who else would be there. Kyle Busch can't run any more races, so he won 2 road course races this year at Coda and at Elkhart Lake. Or no, he actually won Coda, Elkhart Lake. Yeah, he said Coda. Yeah, and then he won it. Yeah, Coda and Elkhart Lake. Otherwise, the road courses have been Ty Gibbs, and then it was Ty Gibbs and
AJ
AJ
Allmendinger.
Allmendinger. Yeah, so um, it's. I mean, I have to go and look at this right here. As it stands, Ty Gibbs starts 15th. Jade Buford there is right next to him, road course veteran. You have some other guys going to go here. What is it? Kyle Tilley being the 99. Eric Jones will be in the 31. That'll be interesting to see.
Austin Dillon, the
Q
23.
Ball, yes. Bald Spot will be in the 23. LeBay 26. That'll be another one to look at. Road course veteran. What is it? Yeah, after you get, I mean, you can never can count out Jeremy Clements on a road course. You figure for the points situation, Herbst is 32 points off of the cutoff. You know that Stuart Haas will put in. They have good cars there. What are they going to do to try to make something happen? Allgaier and Cindric are on the front row. Hemrick and Burton, row 2. Haley and Allmendinger, row 3. Maggot Moron, Brett Moffitt will be in 9th. So it's I think it's pretty cut and dry. It's either going to be Cindric or Allmendinger. Josh, I mean, to me, I'm no Cindric guy. He's going to be driving a 2-car next year. It's going to be nauseating, but I'll take AJ Allmendinger for Saturday afternoon. Honestly, I don't know if you were going to go with him or if you're going to go with Cindric, but I left that out there.
I mean, I'll just go opposite and go Cindric, but I mean, I'll look at the rest of the field. I mean, I think the Cup drivers, if Eric Jones can get up into the top 10, or if Austin Dillon can get up there as well, they might make it interesting. It's tough to say beyond that. I mean, Allgaier has been fairly good on the road courses throughout his Xfinity Series career. So he could be, and he's starting on pole too, although it may not last very long. So it could be opportunity for him. Ty Gibbs, like he won at Daytona Road Course back in February, and it's going to be back on a road course here. So that could be an interesting storyline. What he can do there. But I mean, beyond that, as far as people who can really contend for this race, I don't really see anybody beyond that. And of course, the Riley Herbst's probably not going to do anything in his opportunity to get up into the Xfinity playoffs, and I don't really see anything beyond that. So, I mean, I'll just pick Austin Cindric here to win this race.
And that's about all we can say about that because the Xfinity Series is not that exciting. We'll get into the Cup race, which will be Sunday afternoon. Go over here. The Go Bowling at the Glen. Oh, look at that. Marcus Smith announces that Wednesday that the earliest NASCAR car race at Fairgrounds is 23. Interesting, since SRX just ran there a few weeks ago and had a fully packed crowd. That's convenient. Well, I think they signed a 2-year deal to go and run the super speedway, and they're trying to figure out contingencies with that. But I posed a question in our outline, Josh. I'm going to let you go with it first before I go and throw in my 2 cents. Can a non-Hendrick car or non-Gibbs or Hendrick or Gibbs car win on Sunday? If not, okay, fine. But if you do have an idea of somebody who who would that be?
Well, I think it's pretty clear to me. It's any of the drivers from positions 1 through 3 starting on Sunday. Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney from Team Penske. I think those are the guys that you have to look out for. Keselowski, surprisingly, even though he hasn't really won on a road course, I mean, he's been pretty solid throughout his career at Watkins Glen. I mean, he had years where he finished second 3 years in a row. He's had multiple top tens top fives at this track throughout his career. So he doesn't get enough credit for being a road racer, and I think starting on pole is a pretty good advantage for him to have. So I think possibly Brad Keselowski can win this race. Uh, Maybe Stuart Haas shows up, see something from Kevin Harvick. Also has had a good track record on the road courses over the years, former winner at Watkins Glen back in 2006. So I think definitely, and he's also won at Sonoma as well back in 2017. So definitely an opportunity for Stuart Haas if they have the pace. But I think beyond that, I think that's going to be the challengers, either one of the cars from Penske or Stuart Haas. So basically, the two best Ford teams, and then also Hendrick and Gibbs there. So I mean, Gibbs, you're gonna have Martin Truex, who's been fairly solid on road courses throughout his career. Hamlin, solid track record. Kyle Busch, as won at Watkins Glen before. You have Christopher Bell, who won earlier this year at Daytona Road Course. And then, on Hendrick's side, I mean, Chase Elliott obviously is the best driver there for road courses. Kyle Larson has also become proficient at road courses and has been throughout his career. So those guys as well. I mean, Alex Bowman, William Byron, maybe not as strong on the road courses, but I mean, you look at Hendrick, the 5 and the 9 are the guys to look out for on the road course. So I think that's going to be the storyline is those two cars, all of Gibbs probably, or at least Hamlin and Truex, and then Keselowski and possibly Harvick going out and contending for this race.
Yeah, my hope is one of these next two races, and it goes into one of the other points we wanted to discuss, is the cutoff in regards to the playoff with Almirola's win. There's 14 winners this year, and which makes it a little bit more, or 13 winners, actually, sorry, 13. Hamlin is the regular season points leader by 13 over Larson. Harvick right now, in terms of total points, would actually be fourth or third. It looks, yeah, fourth in points. But right now he's 15th. The cutoff is 5 points between Tyler Reddick and Bald Spot Dylan. And then after that, it's basically an epic disaster. You need a miracle to make it in. Use this time, since these guys are outside the top, what is it, the top 16. Give a shout out to Bubba Wallace for finally putting a ring on Amanda, getting engaged. So congrats to him and Amanda for that, and looking forward to seeing what they're going to post on the socials about this wedding. It's probably going to be a crazy wedding. Probably going to get between Hamrick, Blaney, and Clyde. Somebody's going to be riding a golf cart or something. It's going to be bad, but it'll be cool. Ross Chastain has been doing well on the road courses all year long. Announced that he's going to be in the number 1 for Trackhouse next year. Basically, nut punching or giving a junk punch to Teresa Earnhardt, keeping the one car out there along with the 99. So Chastain will be in that car next year. Outside of that, I mean, you look at, I think Briscoe right now, he's tied with Eric Almirola, of course, in points. That they're tied for 23rd in points. Almirola needed the win to go and get that tie. But Briscoe, he's good on the road courses. I feel like one of these next two races are his best chance. I don't see him getting the help. And I don't think Stuart Haas has the best super speedway cars by any measure. So if he doesn't win one of these next two races, I have a hard time believing that Briscoe will make the playoff, and he'll win the Rookie of the Year, basically by default. But it'll it won't be with him making the playoffs like Custer did last year, but at least he's beating Custer in points. So there is that. Brad winning would be cool. I wish he would have won at New Hampshire the week before because that car is really cool. Ordered diecast. I think the other person to look at though is Tyler Reddick. He had a great run. He qualified on pole at Coda. Then he had a great run at Road America. He hasn't won a cup race yet. At some point, he has to break that. Would be an interesting place. I think Daytona, of course, would be one that would come up. Or, I mean, these next four races, I think, are all races that could be a place where Tyler Reddick gets that win, which in turn would go and set things on its side again. Would put Kevin Harvick on the points bubble, which would be crazy. The guy's top five in points. And he would be on the bubble for the playoffs, which is nuts. I'm kind of here for it because the NASCAR series in general this year have been pretty awful, and making it so that Kevin Harvick would have to go and either win Indy road course or win at Michigan again, or the real wild card of all is going out to a super speedway and having to win there to backdoor yourself into the playoffs after being top five in points most of the year would be something to see. Let's go back over here. So, the GSP roundup for this week, go into that, is Formula 3 W Series at the Hungaroring last week. Go into, you had the race, what is it? Colombo won the first race. Lorenzo Colombo in race one at the Hungaroring. And you have, Lorenzo Colombo over Iwasa and Ollie Caldwell. Logan Sargent finished fourth. Clement Novalak fifth. Hauger sixth. Smollier seventh. David Schumacher eighth. Jack Doohan ninth. Matteo Nannini 10th. In race two, we had Matteo Nannini over Enzo Fittipaldi, Roman Stanek, Smollier, Hauger, Schumacher, Colombo, Novalak, Sargent, and Iwasa, your top 10. And in race three, Dennis Hauger, Artur Leclerc, Jack Doohan, David Schumacher, Novalak, Smollier, Vesti Caldwell, Enzo Fittipaldi, and Logan Sargent in the 10th position there. Juan Manuel Correa, then whatever, Jack Crawford. That's who there. We got Victor Martins was buried in that race. So it's a huge points lead for Dennis Hauger. He's won 3 races so far this year and has 3 second places, 55 and a 66 point lead on Jack Doohan. Jack Doohan has a 9-point lead on Frederick Vesti, who's in fourth, 5-point lead on Caldwell, who's in third. In regards to Smollier and Novalak is 21 points back. Victor Martins is 23 points back. And then after that, it's kind of whatever. Logan Sargent right now is 13th in points, 2 points behind David Schumacher, 3 behind Iwasa, 11 behind Artur Leclerc in 8th. This is something to see. Juan Manuel Correa only has 9 points. Kalen Frederick, 2 points. Jack Crawford, 6. In regards to the Americans in F3, comes to the W Series. Jamie Chadwick gets a win there in race 1. And then, for race 2. Results. looking at that. Yeah, in the race, it was Chadwick over Alice Powell and Marty. And Bethke Visser 5th. Thomas Selly 9th. Jessica Hawkins 10th. Sabri Cook finished 14th, right behind Abby Eaton. Vicky Perea, who's great to look at and not much of a driver, finished 16th out of 18. The standings see Jamie Chadwick take a 1-point lead over Alice Powell. They both have 2 wins, and then in the case of Chadwick, a 3rd and a 6th, and then Powell's a 2nd and an 8th. Sabri Cook, Vicky Perea, Caitlin Wood are the only ones that haven't scored a point so far this season. We'll go from the Formula or W Series to the IMSA race at Road America to see how that'll go there. IMSA Sports Car Weekend, the Road America 120. And you have, I'm trying to go over here and be a novel concept. Go and do that. You'll have the 8 to 11. They'll show it on tape. But then the IMSA race will be at 2:35 or 2:40, 5:20. On track pass. Basically the Road America 500. We got. Let's see what classes are there. Not to watch for entry list. There you go. That's what I want. All 5 WeatherTech classes be running. Was it 6 prototypes in the DPI category? The 3 Cadillacs from Chip Ganassi, JDC Miller, and Whalen Engineering, and 2 Acuras from Konica Minolta, Ashwin Taylor Racing, and then Meyer-Shank Racing, and then the lone Mazda. In LMP2, there's 4 cars in that class. Prototype 3, there's 7. Andretti and Askew, of course, the number 36. Bennett and Braun, 54. Gar Robinson, Felipe Fraga. Dylan Murray, Jim Cox. Mike Skeen, Terry Olson. JR3 Racing. Keating and Jensen, 52. DL and Merriman and Aero Motorsport, 18. Tristan Nunez, 11. And then, there's that. GTLM will be the 2 Corvettes and the WeatherTech Porsche. And the biggest class is GT Daytona with 15 cars. Of course, the 4 miles will be spread out, no problem. With the next race, MotoGP, going to Red Bull Ring. Danny Pedrosa, of course, returns. Been a couple weeks here for MotoGP standings. For the current point standings in MotoGP, sees Fabio Quartararo leading by 34 points over Johan Zarco. Then Paco Bagnaia is 13 points behind Zarco. Mir 21 and 22 for Jack Miller. Vinales, Oliveira, Alex Espargaro, Brad Binder, Mark Marquez is the top 10 in regard to points in right now in the Moto2 World Championship. Remy Gardner has a 31-point lead over Raul Fernandez, nearly 56-point lead on Bezzecchi. It's huge gaps. So Gardner up there, Fernandez and Bezzecchi kind of in their own little world. Guard Joe Roberts is 10th, and Cameron Beaubier is 15th. Sees Pedro Costa 48 points ahead of Sergio Garcia. And then there's other guys: Dennis Foggia, Benatti, and Jaume Mazia in fifth, Darren Binder sixth. Those are people. We'll get into that. The next thing is DTM at Zolder. I don't really care. Series is basically dying. And yeah, so there's that. There's some interesting drivers that are basically buried. So it is what it is. I don't know about you, Josh, but what are you thinking in regards to what you've seen so far in training camp? Anybody that's standing out for your Jags? Anybody that is doing anything of great significance? I mean, the fact that Urban Meyer hasn't had a health episode is kind of a miracle for you guys. And
I
that,
mean, it's a bit early,
yeah, the stress hasn't really gotten there yet. Probably will happen around week 7 or 8. But also Trevor Lawrence playing well. Not a transition, but a lot of positives going on for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say about Lawrence is, I think yesterday, the first practice with pads on, first practice that defense could really, make a play on the ball. They or Lawrence was able to throw a couple of picks to start out that practice, but then he figured it out, and then later on was had a pretty good completion percentage. I think he completed all his passes through a couple of touchdown passes as well. I think, but that just shows he's able to bounce back from his mistakes, and he got used to the defense and he's started able to complete passes and stuff. But I mean, I think offensively, just want to see what Marvin Jones Jr. came from Detroit. What he does, I think Laviska Shenault has a pretty good year ahead of him. A lot of expectations for him being second year wide receiver, very physical slot receiver. I think he also has the ability to be on the outside. And would really like to see what DJ Chark does. This last year, his contract. Urban Meyer's been spending time with him, in particular on an individual basis before the start of training camp practices and everything. So that's a storyline I find very curious. Of course, there's a lot of talk about if Tim Tebow makes the team as a tight end. No idea if he actually will or not. There was some clips of him doing like a one-on-one battle with one of the other tight ends, and he lost. It was like a trench battle or something where they're lining up and doing blocking, and then the other tight end threw him to the ground there. So that's going to be interesting. See if Tim Tebow makes it to the final 53 roster for the initial game, I guess. And then would like to see what the defense does. We have some players still on the reserve list. CJ Henderson, last year's first round pick, is supposed to be one of the best or number one cornerback or number two cornerback. So once he gets back into practice and gets reacclimated with the team, want to see what he looks like. Especially since they used him to essentially replace Jalen Ramsey. So we'll see what he does. And I think Shaq Griffin should be a really good player as well. And, I think he'll probably end up leading the team in turnovers. Potentially, we'll see what happens. But I think there's going to be a lot of surprises here for the Jags. It's not going to be a 1-15 team like last year. I think the over-under is probably around 6 wins. So we'll see what there. I mean, I know some people think potentially a possible run at the playoffs is one of the wild cards now that they've actually added an extra game, and we have going to have 3 wild cards. So I think that's going to be interesting. Definitely think they'll have at least 6 wins, possibly maybe 7 to 8 is probably the realistic scenario. So definitely a very interesting thing that will happen. And I think for Jacksonville, I think trajectory of their franchise is definitely on the upside, and a lot of things to be excited about for this season and beyond.
Yeah, a lot to be excited for with the new coaching staff, with Trevor Lawrence, the youth that is there, and the potential that is there. It's kind of resetting to where you were, hopefully, where you were probably in like 2017 when you made the AFC Championship game. I mean, For the Niners, the talk is basically the quarterbacks, but there's also a lot of uh, news in regards to the defensive line. D Ford is actually healthy, it seems. God willing, and I'm gonna knock on wood, whatever here, because he can't stay healthy. Most of these guys can't seemingly, but you know, D Ford's out there, Nick Bosa's out there. Their line is crazy good if they're healthy, but then that's just the case of the Niners in general. Garoppolo's having an all right start to camp. It sounds like between coaches, players, and the whole bit that Trey Lance is a real deal. Kind of like what I was thinking and saying on here. Um, and it's almost like a matter of when, not more like when, not if, because he's got the talent, skill, scrambling ability, the whole bit, and a great arm, great accuracy. Um, we'll see what happens. Jimmy G is working on things and he's feeling good. He's got positive mojo going, but I think the receiving core, the running back, all this, the line's more improved. Alex Mack is going to make a big difference at the center position for the Niners, uh, solidifying the line in general because of Trent Williams and all that. But the defense, the cornerbacks are all thin. Secondary's kind of thin. I mean, the safeties are all right, but cornerback's going to be in position to watch with some of the rookies they have, and can never count out Fred Warner, of course, who just signed a massive extension, one of the best middle linebackers in the game, guiding this defense right behind those defensive linemen. We'll get into more detail as we go. The weeks go on, get closer to football season. But Josh, did you have any time since you came back from vacation to do sim racing, or did you do any during your vacation? How did that whole work out?
I mean, yeah, I didn't really have a, I mean, because I was away from my house. I mean, I was in West Florida during my vacation and was in a condo next to the beach. So, with my family, so didn't really have any opportunity to do any sim racing. But I mean, since then, I mean, the other night I did race with Charlotte in the 1987 cars. As usual, continue on with the 1987 cars, and that was a tougher than what I expected, especially with the tire wear, and ended up wearing out the tires to the point where the telemetry showed 0% on the right front, on the inside and the middle portions of the tread. So definitely got to work on, or at least it shows how much you got to take care of the tires, especially these 1987 cars. But really, other than that, I haven't really had much of an opportunity to get on iRacing this week. But I mean, I've started getting into Formula One 2021, the game, and it's definitely an interesting game to play for F1 racing. Definitely, trying to learn more about the sport than when I see on TV, and definitely helps understand, more of the strategy and the driving techniques that you have to do in Formula One that maybe the average American fan doesn't quite understand. So definitely with the storyline or the story mode there is also good. I mean, you start out as a rookie winning the championship in GP2 or in Formula 2, and then you get the choice to pick one of the lower teams in F1. Like you get to pick Haas, AlphaTauri, I think Williams, Alfa Romeo, and I think there's another team I can't
Aston
remember.
Martin.
Yeah, Aston Martin. Yeah, and so I picked Red Bull, or not Red Bull. I picked AlphaTauri, and then they pair you with like a veteran
Yeah.
there, and uh you're supposed to, like, the storyline is that you clash with the veteran all year throughout various points. The first race is at Australia, and I guess like you have to race up to your teammate, and then uh, the story, the cutscene comes in, and then it shows you're about to go into, I forget which turn it is, but you're about to go into the corner. You're trying to make a move on your teammate, but then one of the other guys behind you also gets a draft off of both of you guys, or the toe off of you guys, and then he tries to make it three wide. Then you lose it, hit your teammate spins out. You continue on, and then teammates pissed, and then throughout the year that just builds up and up, and then eventually at the end of the season at Mexico City, it turns out that you're trying to pass the veteran, and then you both make contact, take each other out, a la Verstappen and Ricardo at Baku a few years ago, kind of like that. And then the cutscene cuts to the team principal being pissed at you and your teammate, and then they go on from there, and then you go on the next year, and then you actually take on the veteran role, and then you have to I guess play the veteran. So I'm on that part right now, but I did actually win a couple of races. I guess on the as the rookie. But I mean, it wasn't like it was on like one of the lower levels of difficulty. Still, trying to learn the intricacies and handling of the Formula One cars and the tracks as well. But even when you won races, like it would tell you congrats for winning a race and stuff, and they like the characters would be happy, but it didn't really change the storyline as well. Like even with all the conflicts and stuff, I feel like if you actually did good, like it should change the trajectory of the storyline, and maybe they should account for that. So that's something maybe to consider. I don't know, but gotta I guess get into the other parts of the game, because I think you can also there's another mode I guess where you can actually um, run the whole season as one of the teams, or you can create your own driver or team and go through that. So probably need to try that as well, and then the multiplayer as well with that, and get online with other people. I mean, I know one of our other guests, I think Phil Spain, he's played it a couple times, and we got to hit him up and race him, I guess, on F1 2021 or something like that. Maybe try to work something out soon or whenever we all have free time. But definitely an interesting game to play. And the one thing that I wish I could do is use my wheel with it, but it's not compatible. So I'm kind of stuck with the controller until I can find a workaround for that, which maybe I might figure out something for that. But still, definitely a great game to play. Definitely for everybody, whether you're hardcore F1 fan or somebody that's trying to just learn the sport as a new fan, and learn the drivers and learn all the tracks and all that stuff.
Yeah, F1 2020 it got my attention and made me think about getting a new system because of how involved it is. And I mean, not you have to run it with a wheel and pedals and a little bit for it to really be good. So I mean, that's something that isn't anywhere close, but at a minimum, getting the game and being able to experiment would be something I would like to do, and hopefully we'll be able to do soon enough. But that's something to work on, hopefully for um, I think that's something to work on here, probably for Christmas or whatever. But we'll see on that, and we'll uh checking in with you, man, in regards to your sim exploits, both on console or on the computer. Um, Before we go tonight, Josh, where can we find you on social media and your Twitch stream, the whole bit like that?
Yeah, as usual, you can find me Twitter at JP Huffine, and so we'll talk about F1, we'll talk about Indy cars, and talk about NASCAR. So, I mean, IndyCar and NASCAR will be on discussion this weekend as both those races or series return to action, and of course, other things. Maybe talk about other stuff on there too, and then also the Twitch streams will be on there as well at Twitch TV slash USailor2, and it's where I'll have mostly just iRacing right now. Probably try to set up the console to do some Twitch streaming, so whenever I play F1 2021, you can watch that there and commentate on that as well. So try to get that one set up too, so you can see all the stuff, not just iRacing there on Twitch.
Yeah, and you can follow me on Twitter at Philip G. Matthew. You can follow the Grip Strip Podcast at Grip Strip Pod on Twitter. Um, you can find the Grip Strip Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Podbean, Pandora, um, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, basically wherever you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to the Grip Strip Podcast. We do it once a week. We talk about all racing, that any type of racing that you can remember or think of. talk about it here as long as it goes fast. We talk about football as well. We can get in more detail, especially on fantasy side, because we're both in the Fall Brawl League, trying to get the belt and the ring this year for sure. So, thanks to you all for listening this week on the Ripster Pod. Thanks to Josh for all the great content and takes, and for having. I'm glad that you had a good vacation, were able to relax and get back into the routine of things. And now that we're back into this routine, with things getting busier, we'll have plenty to discuss. We'll have IndyCar at Nashville. We'll have NASCAR at Watkins Glen. We'll have stuff in the world of motorsports to discuss on silly season things, football, the whole bit. We'll talk about it here on the Grip Strip podcast. So take care of one another, take care of yourself, stay safe, stay vigilant, and don't fall for the BS in regards to certain things, especially with health. Take care, God bless, and good night.